All right, it looks like we've got quorum, so I will begin the meeting. This is the January 29, 2025 meeting of the Environmental Management Commission. We're located in Kona, but we have people on Zoom. I will do roll call just to see who's here or not. Is Jim Beats here?
Yes, Jim Beats, District 1.
Okay, and someone told me Laura Ocasio is on Zoom.
I'm present on Zoom.
Okay. Oh, I'm supposed to ask, do you have anybody in the room with you?
No, I do not.
No, for either one. Same goes for you, Del. Are you online? Del Otsuka? District 3, do you see her?
Was.
Apparently you're not showing up on the screen, Del. Let's work on that. Erica Perez from District 4. Is she online?
Unless iPhone 5.
Oh, jeez. I don't know what iPhone 5 is. District 5 is vacant, so if anybody knows someone who should join EMC, please encourage them to apply. I do know that in the room we have Lee McIntosh from District 6 and Gonzalo Garcia from District 7 and Dorothy Norris from District 8, and I am Georgine Adams from District 9. So we will begin. So call to order. I don't even know what time it is. Do we have the commissioners on screen?
Laura, Jan.
Del, you're still not showing up on the video. Just to help us verify we've got quorum at all times to have you on the screen. The first item on the agenda, oh, I guess I need to go back. Did Corey have time to wait a little bit?
Yes.
Okay, but we'll get to public statements. I'll announce her. First item is number 2, approval of the minutes from November 27, 2024, forever ago. You may have noticed that it's a different format than we've done in the past, and I would welcome or encourage the next chair, which we'll be voting for toward the end of the meeting. Whether you like these kind of minutes that are more summary and then referring to the video recording time so that you can go see exactly what somebody said, or the more transcripty minutes that Peter, Sir, and I had done. Just let us know, or let the next chair know. Can I get a motion for approval of the minutes? I'm on minutes. And a second?
I'll second.
Thanks. Okay, any discussion, corrections? Again, question of whether or not this format works for you. We do have the recording and a transcript, but the transcript is really frustrating to read because it imagines all sorts of things that it thought you said. but there are references, we put the timings when the different discussion items occurred. But other than that, oh, is there a comment?
We have Erica Perez.
Oh, Erica showed up. Thank you, Erica. She's District 4.
Sorry about that.
No problem. That's good. That was Erica Perez saying no problem. So I'm not seeing any comments on the minutes. Should we go to approval? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. So we have new administration with Mayor Alameda. And we have a new deputy director, Craig Kawaguchi, who's here to give us the new administration's welcome. You may be aware that on Friday, the 31st, the council will be reconsidering the appointment of Wesley Sagawa. And if he is duly appointed and affirmed, he'll be at the February meeting, we hope so. So until then, Craig, welcome, wearing your new hat.
New hat, yeah. So, it's just some background.
Sure.
So,
Can I- Our microphone just fell over, guys. Please hang on. Oh, that was spooky. I think it's caught under your computer.
It's just not long enough. Make sure if anyone, if you're Craig, let us know.
Okay, so just some background. I've been with the county since 2005. I guess helped start the vaudeville program for the county. Prior to that, and what was it? I worked at the campus recycling center when I went to college for about 2 years. Moved home without a job. One of the jobs that I did do was worked at the Hawai'i reuse center when it first opened for about a year. Then ended up with recycling. I've been with recycling since 2005.
Well, welcome in your new role as deputy. Do you have any statements to make relative to expected changes or initiatives or?
Not at the moment. We have ideas that I hopefully can share soon.
Okay, understand. Awkward timing here. So anyway, welcome, and I assume that you're open for individual communication from commissioners. If you have anything you'd like to share, or again, welcome Craig to the position. So we'll move on to item 4, public statements on the agenda. And I understand that Corey Harden is interested in giving testimony. So Corey, have 3 minutes.
Oh,
State
yes.
your name and the item that you want to talk about.
Oh, yes. Good morning, commissioners, and want to thank you all for your volunteer
Not
service.
hearing you. I should say also that Corey did submit written comments. There were 10 written comments in the testimony file. Apparently one came in just before midnight last night. I haven't seen it. So be sure to be aware of the written comments that come. Corey, are you talking yet?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you-
yes, great.
Oh, okay. Well, good morning, commissioners. I would like to thank you for your volunteer service. I'm speaking on agenda item number 7, number 1, questions for Malama 1. These ideas are based on suggestions from a couple of friends. So most plastic recycling plants can only recycle 70% of the plastic, and that leaves about 30% that cannot be recycled. Looks like for Malama 1, collecting plastic from the entire state, that would work out to 15 million pounds of plastic that could not be recycled, left on our island. So it would be good to ask Malama 1 about the specific percentage and poundage and how they arrived at those numbers. What will Malama One do with the plastic that cannot be recycled? Most plastic used for recycling is contaminated with toxic chemicals like pesticides, maybe pharmaceuticals, Lord knows what else. So that creates risk for the recycling workers, for consumers who use the recycled plastic, and for the environment. So how will Malama One eliminate these risks? Also, is it correct that the Malama One filtering system only captures particles of 50 microns or larger? And what are the environmental impacts of smaller particles that won't be captured? Where will liquid waste from the plant go? And what will be the concentration of these minute particles in the liquid waste? And can the county sewage treatment plant remove these particles? And there's also airborne particles. How will those be captured? I also wonder if there's any measurement of emissions that will be done for volatile organic compounds and greenhouse gas emissions. What are the end products that the plant will produce and what will they be used for? And how long will they be in circulation? How long will they be useful? Let's see. I also wonder what evaluation has been done of the environmental impacts of the plant and who conducted the evaluation, Malama One or an independent evaluator. And last, what permits or approvals do they need and where are they?
Sorry
What?
about that.
I'm wondering what permits and approvals they need and where they are as far as getting those permits and approvals. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those. And your written comments were also very clear and helpful.
Next is Corey.
It's who?
Corey Hardin.
That's who that just spoke.
Oh, no. Jeff Silva.
Jeff Silva. State your name and the agenda you would like to speak to.
Thank you so much. My name is Jeff Silva. I would like to speak on wastewater item 6C, I believe, regarding Pahala wastewater treatment. But actually it's more in relation to Punaluu. Briefly, I'm a resident of Ka'u, been a resident there since 2000. I also am an owner at Colony 1 at Punaluu, the condominiums. I am the president of the association. The association represents 76 owners at Punaluu. And I also happen to be a grade 4 water distribution system operator and a grade 1 treatment operator. I wanted to bring it to the Commission's attention that there's been some close calls regarding the wastewater down at Punaluu. And I want to make sure that's on your radar. The owner of the system has not been making the necessary investments to keep up with the upgrade and maintenance of the wastewater system at Punaluu. They had an event last year where essentially they were pumping wastewater using a truck and transferring up to their wastewater treatment plant. That went on for, I believe it was 6 weeks. They were pumping approximately 3 trucks a day and then shuttling it up to their wastewater treatment plant. Essentially what I'm saying is that they're on the verge of having severe wastewater issues. And I think the commission should be aware of that.
Just to clarify, that's a private system?
That is a private system.
Thank you.
And essentially the wastewater pumping station is quite close to the ocean. So if they do have a pumping situation where they lose power to the pump. It's all manual. So if, the pump isn't turned on manually, they will have wastewater overflow down close to the ocean in a very short amount of time. So I wanted to make sure the commission's aware of that. And I'm not aware that the commission is aware of that potential problem. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you for the information. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak either now or when we get to the agenda item, if I remember to ask you again?
This is Alan Fukamizu.
Alan?
Yes, I'd like to give testimony when the agenda item comes up.
And which agenda item?
Wastewater, Pahala and Nalehu.
Excuse me, Pahala and Nahalu? So C.
Nalehu.
Nalehu.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the paperwork in front of me.
Okay. I'm trying to track our agendas, so that's C, little I. Okay, I'll
Yes.
try to make sure to remember to ask you to speak then.
Okay, thank you.
Aloha. This is Christine Kubat, Recycle Hawaii. I would like to speak on the agenda item related to Malama 1 when the matter comes up.
Okay, when it comes up.
Thank you.
Tiff, will we be able to put okay, we are working on getting, the testimony came in late from Recycle Hawaii, and Tiff is working on getting it into the testimony folder right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to give testimony at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to unfinished business. We were discussing ours. First, I need to know, is Chris Barber and any of his crew online?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good. We are going to continue any discussion from last time. Chris had specifically asked for some focus on the FOG, fats, oils, and grease provisions in the bill. And if people have some specific questions or comments to pass along on that working draft, now's the time to speak.
Georgine, can I add something real quick? Do you mind? So the reason that I requested, everybody kind of look at the FOG program and take a look at the proposed pretreatment is because our new NPDES permit for Hilo has specific stipulations within it that at a minimum, the county shall implement a FOG program and a pretreatment program for the Hilo treatment plant service area. So, I don't necessarily think that it's the, I guess, the fairest approach to just, focus on one area. I think it's a program that will benefit, the island and all of our collection systems, all of the county systems island-wide. So that's why we're adding it to the code as a whole as well. So there's right that program will help us solve some operational issues. It'll also help us to comply with regulatory requirements, permit requirements, as well as AOC requirements. So that's why I just wanted to be transparent with everyone that, this code is going to target a couple of different specific challenges that we are working through.
Would you expect that at least for the Hilo area, that you would go ahead with a FOG and pretreatment program, even though this bill hasn't been adopted? Do you have a shorter time frame that you've got to get it out?
Well, the thing is, you know, I'd love to start tomorrow, but at the end of the day, if we don't have the local legal jurisdictional capabilities, then the folks that don't, you know, voluntarily comply, there's really no motivation at that point. So we need to establish the legal authority and then proceed after that point, so that we as an agency can show due diligence and that, you know, the folks that don't want to comply, you know, with requirements, aren't treated any differently than the folks who voluntarily, right? They're still meeting the same standard.
I had a question or two about the FOG program. Does it apply to those who are discharging to private wastewater treatment plants?
So I would say at this point in time, I don't have language that would make that a requirement. So usually I would think that if you're a private facility in your in your PUC code, you know, that governs that facility or connection to that facility or the rates that facility charges, there would be stipulations that would require FOG provisions. So there are some various, you know, FOG provisions in the plumbing code that the county does enforce, and that are applied equally to everybody, whether they're connecting to a private system or a public system. So yeah, that's at current, that's what happens. Is that something that you would like to see within our code, is that it applies to both private and public as well?
Would you like me to read the message?
Yeah,
aloud?
if it's meant to be public.
Yeah, for it to be public, yeah. This
Okay.
is Alan. It has been over 2 years and the FOG program has not been written into county code. Who is in charge of that? There is a FOG position provisions under PUC.
Okay, so as far as who is responsible, right? The code changes, right? That's drafted by the division. The department, so administration director, deputy director review. If they concur, then we, you know, let the mayor know, hey, we're going to be, you know, doing, you know, X, Y, and Z with our code, and make sure that, you know, that the team is all on the same page, right? And then we can propose we can propose that code change as an ordinance from the division or from the department to county council. So currently, wastewater division, I made the choice to put the code into the Environmental Management Commission for a prolonged period of, you know, just soliciting public comments, working with my advisory commission to at least make sure everybody was familiar with the provisions and address comments or concerns prior to submitting to council. So as far as the responsibilities, right, it'll go from council, it'll get it'll get referred from council into the commission. It'll come back to the Environmental Management Commission. The Environmental Management Commission will recommend approval or disapproval of the code changes and push it back up to county council, where it will further be deliberated and either approved or amended or whatever they want to do. So like I said, the responsibility in terms of changing the code, right? That's the department, council, public consultation, and then the code changes and administrative rules are drafted. Now, I became involved in May of this previous year, 2024. Okay, I drafted the code, which I released into EMC in June. It came with the FOG provisions. There were some comments, some concerns. I made revisions to those, and then I resubmitted to council or to EMC this previous, I want to say it was in December or late November. And so after that's done, we'll address the comments, and, you know, the new administration can take a look at it, and then we'll move forward from there. But I think it's a shared responsibility with the division as well as council. It's not just there's not just one single point that's in charge.
I have a question in the chat from user MWMOWTF. At what GPD would a FOG provision be applied to a private treatment system?
Sorry, at what gallon per day? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of a FOG provision, honestly, we're going to need to assess that, because previously our code does not apply to private treatment plants. So honestly, I'd be looking to the commission for recommendations or suggestions as my public consultation and advisory board.
No further questions in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, another question I had, somewhat related, is food trucks. What do you do with them?
Food trucks, it depends. So, you know, if a food truck is in a designated area, you know, in a commercial area, you know, connecting to a designated point, then hopefully that point will be connected to some type of an interceptor, or some type of a grease, you know, capturing device. You know, if they're dumping, you know, at a septage facility, then the grease would need to be captured in some type of an internal, you know, grease trap within the truck itself. And quite frankly, I'm not, you know, 100% familiar with, you know, that type of equipment. But I mean, that's a good question. We'll have to look, we'll have to have a bit more of a detailed evaluation of that.
Question
Chair,
from Alex.
just for,
Are all food trucks required to be registered with County of Hawaii DEM for dumping?
At this point in time, anybody who dumps septage at our facilities, yes. But if they are dumping at a private, you know, sewer connection or a lateral somewhere, then no, there is no registration for a food truck.
Question in the chat from user MWM.
Did I hear a question from one of the commissioners? They get precedent here.
yeah,
So-
Chair, I have a question, just a clarifying question for Mr. Sparber. So,
Laura.
Go ahead.
so am I hearing correctly that it's voluntary and that it's not written in? I just wanted to clarify that, because it sounded like the question was pretty direct, but I wanted to get clarification on that answer.
Sorry, what would you mean by
So
voluntary?
for,
What?
for food trucks, there is no provision that monitors or mandates food truck disposal with regard to fog and pretreatment.
So explicitly in our code, there is no provision to exclude them. We do define, food institutions as institutions, right, that are involved in food preparation, and list specific items. So if a specific inclusion for food trucks was to be included, I mean, that could definitely be a consideration. But and I think it goes back to quite honestly, I'm not familiar with how you would, other than an exterior type of grease trap, we would need to evaluate what solutions that food truck could do. I mean, because there could be some food trucks and all they make are smoothies, right? There's no grease. So potentially those folks could just get an exclusion because they're not grease generators, just like a Jamba Juice who doesn't generate grease, but they're brick and mortar, or they have a brick and mortar store. But then you could have a truck that all they do is provide deep fried goods, and they do generate grease, and that is a challenge. And so I think we have to take a bit more of a detailed look, but I mean, we could consider an exclusion. I'm not saying no.
I mean, I think, obviously that you haven't really worked through it. It was not apparent in my reading of the bill that you would cover food trucks. You tended to talk about facilities. I don't know if a truck is a facility. And so there are complications. They're big and little trucks and busy and not so busy and different stuff. So I would appreciate, you guys go back and think about how do we want to deal with it. It's somewhat related to the comment I made about when you want to begin this in terms of education on what best management practices are. That's the BMP you see in the bill. You could start just a general education program for everybody, including your own kitchen operation for your family, on here's the way to prevent fog clogging up our sewers, and whether they're private sewers or county sewers. So that kind of thing could begin today, versus the official, here's going to be implementation with fines for non-compliance, blah, blah, blah. So it could be a kind of a two-track, but I'm not going to spend time here to solve the food truck issue. I think that's something for CEM to go back and maybe report back if you come up with a great idea at a later meeting.
Sure.
If that's okay. Are there any other questions about the fog provisions or any of the other bill provisions? Dot Norris.
Hi. Your the way I read the policy is that the food waste must not mix with the sewage waste. Is that correct? So that's going to require replumbing and that sort of thing, but it does not cover residential areas. Is that correct?
Correct. So the current code does not apply to residential areas. Our thought was for high grease generating areas that are residential, right? Those would be identified as hotspots, and then my compliance team would provide outreach, right? We would have door hangers. We could go door knock and door hang and try to get as much awareness as possible. Then looking at your facilities, Dot, you bring up a great point. How do we approach these restaurants, right? Maybe they were built, their plumbing was installed in the 80s or the late 70s, right? The domestic sewage from their bathroom is connected to their, sink drain pipe that comes in from their kitchen, right? The current construction, that's not how we do it anymore. Generally, your kitchen will be plumbed into a grease trap or whatever, and then it'll go out to your lateral, and then your domestic wastewater will be separated. But for those folks, I think that we need to provide an exclusion for those folks, a variance in a sense, and just say, hey, you guys, we're going to come to your restaurant, educate you, and we're going to say, hey, you can cut down 80% of your grease generation by these behavioral BMPs. Here's your variance, or an exclusion, and just make sure that, you follow these things. Now, let's say that restaurant gets bought out by another company and they come in for building permits. Hey, you have an opportunity to make some modifications. So let's make the modifications now. So that was my approach.
Thank you. I would also like to remind the commission that one of the functions of this commission is to hear challenges to decisions made by the director on things like variances and exemptions from requirements. So this isn't something you should just say, oh, well, DEM will handle that. We may have questions coming back on whether someone should or should not have gotten an exemption or a fine. So don't ignore this stuff. It's complicated and it's a bear to work through the charter language.
Erica has her hand raised.
Erica Perez?
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a clarifying question. There's a question in here from Department of Health requirements, and I was curious also, and what is the Department of Health regulation regarding from a restaurant and food truck perspective, and are they not tracking this already?
So you bring up an interesting thing. When I first started working on this code, I said, hey, what does the Department of Health do in terms of, for the restaurants? So I reached out to our local inspectors, the restaurant inspectors and those guys. And what they're concerned with is the sanitation within the facility. So let's say that you have a restaurant owner that has grease traps under their sink, right? That's how they've decided to, keep grease out of their, sewer. So Department of Health would have the jurisdiction to come in and say, hey, those are not properly maintained, clean them, or else we're going to ding you, right? You're going to lose your safe serve certs or whatnot, because this is unsanitary. So that's one area of jurisdiction they have. In terms of actual grease, requirements from DOH, as far as food, our DOH wastewater branch, we don't have an active, fats, oils, and grease program. They have, they follow the standard EPA discharge prohibitions, which is, fats, oils, and grease above certain concentrations, certain pHs, different things. But as far as a statewide FOG program, usually those FOG programs are left to, usually those FOG programs are left to the county jurisdictions or the PUC utilities. So, now let's say that I was having trouble, right? My FOG inspector goes out, somebody's grease trap under their sink or whatnot is all fouled up. They're not maintaining it. They're not responding to me. One of my enforcement tools is I just give DOH a call and say, hey, look, this guy, he's not cooperating. Can you please help me out? And they'll come over and, just take care of it. And so that's one side of it. But as far as, Greece, it's really left up to the counties at this point. And, DOH, it does look like they are going and getting a little bit more involved, because as you see, the new NPDES permit that we're getting for Hilo has a fog program provision, but there's no statewide, mandate at this point as far as from DOH wastewater branch. Sorry, does that answer the question okay, or do you need anything else?
No, that was very clear. Thank you. It's
Okay.
unfortunate, but it is clear.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest grumbles, with the different branches. I really try to encourage them to, let's work together, cohesive, set of requirements for the counties and the private folks. So anyway, but
Chair, I have a follow-up to that.
That Laura?
Yes. I'm just wondering how often, so I'm assuming it's complaint-based, going through with Department of Health, or if you folks are seeking their assistance for regulation, how often is that being done? And, what kind of portion of time is being spent on your folks' end in doing that?
So on my end at this point in time, I don't necessarily have the legal jurisdiction to walk into a restaurant or a facility that has grease, controls. But my thought is that we would do annual or semi-annual inspections. So the County of Maui, they have an active fog program. They get through their facilities about once a year with inspections. And then they inspect all new construction as well. And we would essentially be, potentially modeling their program with our staff here.
When is that potentially starting?
Well,
And
that would.
How does that implement if right now we don't have is it a matter of workforce or being delegation from the director, or what?
So that would be pending approved code. So I would need to get the code through council and have that signed into law. And then I have jurisdiction. And then I have staff who are properly classified and trained that could conduct those fog inspections. And so we would set up, the implementation plan at that point and start moving forward.
And Mr. Georgine, again, the issue also is this bill, as I read it, is directed to people who put stuff down into county sewers, not those who put it down into private wastewater sewerage.
And
I live in a resort, so the resorts are sending their waste to a private wastewater treatment plant on the west side here.
Yeah, so and I think that's something that we really need to evaluate, because if we're going to apply this to the entire county, then the number of inspections would change. And then, the other thing is with our private utilities, they're generally PUC regulated. And so they have their own governing, requirements and their own laws. So, I would think that, or quite frankly, the way that DOH is moving, I wouldn't be surprised if fog provisions didn't start showing up in private facilities permits. So, it goes back to that question of, I think we need to do further evaluation on jurisdiction and really ask that question of, does the county want to increase its jurisdiction to fog within facilities that discharge to private utilities?
No, it's definitely a policy issue, and whether or not you want to deal with it. My understanding of the process is it's been kind of end of pipe. It's the wastewater treatment plants that have a whole pile of requirements, and those requirements can get blown by the users of their pipes, putting junk, lots of fog into the sewer pipes and hitting the plant and shutting down the plant. Well, then you're in trouble. So whether you're private or public, you need to manage what's being put down your sewers so that your plant will stay in compliance. It is a lot easier to deal with a handful of waste treatment plants than to deal with every pipe owned by everybody. So, I mean, that's kind of been the philosophy, but I think what we're trying to do in this bill, and EPA has been trying to do, although it's a mess all over the country for fog issues, but they're trying to get some standardization of what are best management practices and how can we generally get people to start handling fog correctly. That's my 2 cents overview.
Laura has her hand raised.
Who does?
Laura.
Laura Casio?
Yes.
Go ahead. So could our county code require that these businesses, especially in dealing with food truck and otherwise, require that they contract with services such as Pacific Biodiesel or similar to reuse and recycle the fats, oils, and grease as kind of a way to not have it go into the sewer system? Are you guys considering that?
Well, we would just require, proper disposal of the fats, oils, and grease. So yes, if disposing at the with a company that recycles that grease is that's the ideal outcome that we would definitely be striving for.
Does that preclude you from putting it as part of either incentivizing or requiring or write it into this?
So we could definitely evaluate adding that requirement into our code for sure.
What's the timeline for the end result, or like the final draft and starting to move it through county council?
To be honest with you, at this point in time, I don't necessarily have a defined schedule. I need to sit down with with our administration and get them on board, get everybody comfortable with it. And then I could provide you some more detailed information. So at this time, I would say that this is within, our code. I'd like to get this out and done. Once the MPDS permit is signed, I have 12 months to do so. So I'm probably, say, a year out from getting this approved, which means that we need to be at final draft stage in 3 or 4 months.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other comments regarding the requirements in here?
I was wondering,
Norris.
You mentioned that the recycling requirement was removed from the plan. Is that because it was too cumbersome to and not expedient enough to get this plan out? Or is it because we don't really have the facilities on this island to actually do recycling of fats and oils?
So my fear is that right, the Big Island, right, our companies, they change. And so I'm actually concerned in the event, what happens if there's not enough business to sustain a grease recycler and they leave? Then the solution at that point is to potentially landfill the grease. So, that was one of the reasons that I wasn't really explicit in terms of how do you dispose of your grease. I just would like it disposed of in a manner where it doesn't go down our drain. But we can definitely look at adding some language back in that like Laura said, that would incentivize or potentially encourage the use of a grease recycler primary. Then if one doesn't exist, then there's other means.
This is Georgine. Again, I'll report on it later in the meeting, but looking at the proposed bill to ban the landfilling of recyclables, one of the candidates could well be fog, that it's not to go to landfill if there is a way on this island to get it reused. If there isn't, then we can't force people to set up a fog recycling operation. So it could be not voluntary, but in the meantime, you could start it out. And there is language, I believe, in the bill that does list out reuse as one of the options you've got on proper disposition, correct?
Okay.
I don't remember which section it was, but check the language that's in there. Because I think it is at least mentioned. Forcing it is going to be a whole different mess.
Yeah.
I guess again, any questions on fog? If you have suggestions, shoot them to Chris directly. You don't need to wait for the next EMC meeting, but if you'd like, I can keep this on the agenda to bring up any other issues. Also, note that in the bill right now, there were a couple items that, again, I might bug Chris more than spend a lot of time here, but as an example, there was still a provision that a subdivision would be required to hook up to public sewer, county sewer, if it was within 200 feet of the boundary, if I read that right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether the 200 feet is the magic number or not. If you live way on the other side of the subdivision, it may not be 200 feet for you.
Yeah. And really that comes from, I'm actually working on responding to DOH currently, but DOH, we have rules in place currently that say, hey, if your subdivision is not within 250 feet of sewer, then our county code, I can't necessarily require you to connect unless there's a decision by planning, or there's some other decision that requires that. Our legal jurisdiction is very, it's pretty limited. But DOH is now coming back to county on some of these decisions. And they're saying, okay, well, fine. You guys say that they're outside of your, jurisdiction. So we're going to use our director's, jurisdiction to require them to connect to sewer, even though they are 500 or 1,000 feet away. So then, because county right will say, well, it's outside of our jurisdiction. You're past our, you're past our triggers and our rules. And so I do think that we need to sit down and have that discussion with DOH and say, okay, we need to be on the same page. What are you guys, what is the state's recommendation to the counties in terms of, what are you guys looking at as a reasonable distance? So, that's something that I will be doing with DOH as well, with that requirement.
Good to hear.
Erica Perez.
Erica?
Just wanted to FYI, there is some legislative bills that are out regarding shoreline setback and sea level rise that may have details that would be informative for that process.
Okay, perfect.
One generic question I had, Georgine again. In looking at the pretreatment fees section, which naturally I didn't write down where that was, there were several different potential fees that the director would potentially apply. Is there some idea of a cumulative cap on the fees, or is that's going to be as DEM administrative rules? So we'll see that later.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Georgine, we'll put that on the list of discussion points. But you bring up a good point, that we kind of, we need to be cognizant of our fees and what those are. I do believe though that should hopefully end up tied into our integrated plan, because the goal of that is to recover the cost of to recover the utilities cost. So there's an impact when we get new connections. There's an impact when we get higher than our designed sewage, BOD and TSS loads, right? There are costs associated with all those impacts. And so, our goal is we're not trying to gouge people, but our goal is to just recover the cost of providing our services.
Well, I think for those of you who get the Honolulu paper, they're having some major challenges in raising their sewer fees to cover the costs, or maybe even just to cover 50% of their costs. So that'll be an issue. I think we noted before that the bill right now has kind of a placeholder saying that DEM can operate their wastewater services as an enterprise fund, but doesn't really explain what that means and how they're going to do it. So I think that'll be a topic for us to further explore. And reason I brought up Honolulu is they do operate as an enterprise fund, which means they've got to start charging more to pay for their operations. And their council is having all sorts of fits. So stay tuned. Anybody else, either on Zoom or in the room, to deal with the wastewater bill? Again, it's really complicated.
I have a question.
A question, and you are?
My name is Charlotte Thompson. I'm a resident of Kona. And I am just wondering if there are any kind of provisions within your bills that that are looking at developments, possibly overdevelopments that would tax our water and our sewage systems, and what you do about that.
So you're talking about capacity
I'm talking about capacity.
and when connection would
Well, say
go beyond our capacity to handle it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And how do you handle that, Chris?
Okay, so we have a couple of different ways that we handle it. So when the facility is initially imagined, we have an area in which we use to calculate the proposed treatment volumes per se, the treatments. That's where you see generally we talk about a plant, oh, it's a 5 MGD plant, okay. So it's designed to handle, 5 MGD on a regular day from a certain amount of homes or businesses. Okay. Then, we get that plant into operation and, engineers, we like to be conservative. So we see, okay, everybody's connected and we're only at 3.5 or 4 MGD, right? So there's your actual flow that you're getting at your facility based on real life. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of factors, but that's just the way it is. So when we look at that flow, right, the plant's operating, more people are connecting, homes are being built, businesses being built, there's growth. Then the DOH codes, the DOH rules, I believe we have a 75% trigger. So at 75% design capacity of that facility, we're required to do a facility plan. And then there's another trigger once we hit, say 80 or 90%, then we actually need to implement the facility plan. And what your facility plan is going to do is it's going to say, okay, here are the improvements you can make to increase capacity, and really sometimes, a permit can change. Oh, we need to remove 4 times as much nitrogen now. So now we need to go in and do a facility plan for that. And we need to figure out how we address that. So really we address capacity issues through planning. So currently, we have our integrated wastewater master plan, which has been in discussion for a long time. Forgive us, we're taking a bit of time on this because there's a lot of moving parts. But as a community, that's one way that the previous administration and this administration are approaching those capacity issues. And then how do we pay for those expansions and whatnot? Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways. Some communities choose impact fees. Some communities choose, connection fees. At this point in time, wastewater division has neither. We don't charge an impact fee. We don't charge a connection fee. Basically, the improvements are funded out of our standard capital improvement budget for the whole county. And so I hope that answers the question.
How long does it take to implement another facility?
So
Necessarily a new facility, it's expanding the existing facility.
Or either one. I mean, does the planning department ever say we can't do this development until this infrastructure is in place?
So so what can happen in those cases is, when a development comes in, we look at, okay, does the existing county facility have capacity? And if the answer is no, then right, there's the question with the developer. Okay, so developer, are you able to fund the improvements to mitigate or to increase the size of that facility right? That's one discussion. Or A, do you have another, do you have capacity in another part of your system that we could maybe get the wastewater or connect to there? So, you know, I would say it's a project by project basis, but if your project is in the middle of, you know, nowhere, there's not a private facility, there's not a public facility, and you're putting in over 50 lots, then likely you're going to be working with DOH and looking at a private treatment facility. Now, if you're less than 50 lots, and then you're still going to be working with DOH, but you may be able to use an individual on everybody's property system. So again, it it goes back to the project by project basis. Yeah.
Which brings up, and I don't want to talk about it right now because we need to get through the rest of the agenda, but the issue of 49 lots, which is a state DOH rulemaking change, so that people don't go, oh, well, I got this idea for 100, so I'll go 50 and scooch underneath the cutoff, and then I'll go another 50 and scooch under, and then another 50 and another 50. So how to avoid that kind of creeping expansion and expansion on the capacity. That may be one of the things we do for our next agenda item, is talking about where do we need to start leveraging changes at the state level that are going to get in our way. So, okay with moving on from the wastewater bill?
Yeah.
Do you have something you want us to think about?
Yeah, Georgie, I was going to throw this out. So I think we're actually going to meet with the state coming up here Friday next week. So if anybody has some areas of state legislative change that, you know, they would like to see, send those over. We'll pack them up, we'll take them, and you know, bring them up with the state. And you know, if, again, it goes back to alignment, right? If we can align the state rules to help the counties, you know, have successful implementation of wastewater systems, then I think it's a win for the state as a whole. And it's not just us, right? There's a bigger picture.
Great. Okay, you heard him. Send him in. So the next item on the agenda is to discuss possible policy recommendations for 2025. I don't know, Chrissy, how you guys set up this. I included in the package just my ideas to get you thinking. And this ought to be something that gets reevaluated periodically by EMC, regardless of what are the priorities that we want to, as a commission, be working on and pressing DEM and council for, and how to get our arms around this really complex set of needs. So I put together my ideas, wanted to do a little bit of time here for brainstorming additional thoughts, and hopefully keying in on a reasonable number of priorities that we actually think we might accomplish this year, given the shortfalls. Why can anybody read that? Put it on all 6 screens so that
I wish we had.
I have it on a piece of paper, but if it's okay with you guys, I was just going to work through the points I had and then speak up and add in. We did get one written testimony from Stephen Holmes, who had lots more ideas to add into the wastewater, and potentially plenty of things that could be added to the list. But think priority. What's number 1? What's number 2? What's number 3? The number 1 thing that I put up here is fund sustainable staffing and operations of DEM. we formally submitted to the council the idea of looking into an enterprise fund for wastewater operations. We did not do the same for solid waste. I don't know that that's necessary, but I mean, the concept of there is this model out there called an enterprise fund. Who knows what other great models there are. We've got to do something else. And this is just the funding, finding actual bodies who know what they're talking about to fit into the staffing jobs is another discussion we're going to have later. But the forever question of how do we get things done, and forget federal money, perhaps. I don't know where that stands. I haven't read my TikTok or whatever it is, like what Trump has issued this last minute. But we need to continually be looking at, how do we help make sure we have a sustainable DEM? And so I put down here that the enterprise model is one to look at. Again, they're having issues with that on Oahu. Our water department, water supply, also is kind of more of an enterprise fund. They're fee funded, if you will. And they seem to be doing okay as far as I know, but I'm not an expert in that. Should we push for that as an idea for a priority? And the other is some kind of county-wide environmental fee. The state, the governor talks about a green fee on tourists. We have plenty of tourists come here, or for us all. Was just another idea. Going for federal money, I don't know what to say about that right now. But if there's some other thoughts you would have about, again, sustainable funding, and whether you think it even belongs on a priority list. Uh-oh, Trump is listening.
Jill is here with us. She's having some difficulties, I think.
It's me.
Well, it sounds like there might be two of you on.
Well, I have my iPhone and
That sounds good. Use that. Perfect.
I have my iPad.
Whichever one you're on now is working perfectly.
Okay. So yeah, Georgine, I think that's really good ideas as far as looking at sustainable funding and enterprise funds. And Maui County has both enterprise funds for solid waste and wastewater, but they also, let me get that. They actually have, shucks, I lost it, but they also have something like a special fund that helps to fund certain departments. So I think if you're looking at trying to find ways to help our county do better, I think enterprise fund is the way to go. And I think we can try and shoot for both solid waste and wastewater.
Okay, so, one way to approach this priority would be, sounds like we need to look at other counties and what's working or not working for them. Yikes. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, so for Maui County, they have a general fund that provides for basic services such as the police, fire, parks, and human services. They also have adopted the fixed charge for its waste management system. So that is a step towards making waste management independent from the county's general fund. So I don't know exactly how it will work, but if we're looking to work with other agencies towards different issues that we have, I think that's somewhere we can start, and it's doable.
Let's keep that on the list and know, I mean, what I'm thinking is we set these priorities and not necessarily final at this meeting, but I just want to capture other people's ideas and hand it off to the new chair and say, have fun. You know, setting out pigs, permitted interaction groups to go and do some digging, or other options, getting some guest presentations from other counties, other departments who figured out how to do it. The actual follow-up actions are for a later day, but I think we all agree, yeah, steady funding is what we need. And then I broke it into solid waste and wastewater. So kind of the general highfalutin goals is we want safe management of our waste, and safe at a minimum defined as comply with regulations. Both the regulations that apply to DEM, but also the regulations that apply to our people. Trying to preserve the capacity of our only landfill, and operating under philosophy of resource management instead of waste management, and leveraging public-private partnerships. Those are kind of fluffy, yeah, those would be wonderful goals in my mind. And then I'm going to stick with the good old 2019. Lee made me this wonderful little card picture of Georgine Adams. Always speaks about 2019 Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan because it's been over 2 years working on it. So those have a set of 6 priorities, and I would encourage you to look at those. Probably the one that needs to be blown out more is the number 6 item there, which is county policy and ordinances on source reduction, recycling. And when I think recycling, I also think reuse. I gave some examples that we have talked about. And if you want to pull out some specifically in addition, now's the time. My own little pet project is the banning landfill of recyclables in a phased, feasible process. Expanding capabilities to recycle materials on island. Gave some examples. Supporting extended producer responsibility, state legislation, because I think it's a really tough thing to do at the county level. And then gave a laundry list of items to consider. And then I think a comment that was made at our last meeting by Erica was the idea of, we've got all these great county-wide plans, climate action plan, the general plan, the integrated solid waste management plan, and there are solid waste management recommendations in all those plans. So that was my D. Are there some other items around solid waste you think need to be on this list? It's high priority for EMC.
Erica Perez and Jim Beats have their hand raised. Erica,
Okay, Erica.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a quick clarifying question before I guess make a comment is, we submitted in our last commission meeting at the end of the year some priorities that we had worked on during that meeting, and I'm just, are these integrating into those recommendations and in areas that we were previously talking about, or what is,
I did try
what
to,
is this draft supposed to be for?
what is this draft? I did try to pick up some of the things that were in previous meetings, as well as my own specific ideas. So if I missed one that's dear to your heart, speak up. That's why we're talking.
No, not so much missing. I'm just trying to, like, was what we put together last time submitted, I guess, is my question. And is this to overwrite it? Is this to be a companion to it?
No, this would be hopefully incorporating discussions we've had in the past and better honing what we will use, or the next chair will use as a guiding document of, are we letting things slide that we thought were priorities? And adding.
So what we did last, so again, I'm sorry, I'm not getting, I guess maybe I'm not asking the question clearly enough. We did this last meeting. Where
Correct.
is that list?
This is,
I guess this is a new, okay.
Incorporates that list as well as,
Thank you.
ideas of my own. So it wasn't wasted.
Okay, I will go back and review what we did last meeting in conjunction with this. And I guess my very short addition is if county policies and regulations are going to be reviewed, there is also a state legislative action that DOH is going to be reviewing their policies and regulations to streamline cesspool conversion at the state level. I would highly recommend that our counties engage in that discussion to assure that there's cross-division collaboration between the state and the county wastewater divisions to streamline cesspool conversion.
I haven't talked about wastewater, but that's the next section. So we'll see if I pick that one up. But yeah, interagency, intergovernmental, everything, coordination is one that actually I started out with on the EMC is wanting to do as my personal thing, and I failed. So there. So yeah, that's important, and I hope both Oscar, Laura, and the new administration, works hard on that interagency, interstate coordination.
Jim Beats.
Jim Beats. Okay, so Jim, you have comments?
Yeah, thank you, Georgine. And Jim Beats, District 1. And Georgine, thank you for putting this draft together. I agree with everything that you have on here. And of course, we need to probably add a few things. One of the things under solid waste that I think we actually do need to add, because what Ramsey told us last year really resonated, that it takes, I think he said, almost 20 years to complete the process of a new landfill site. And he also mentioned at another time that it took that our present landfill has a lifespan of about another 20 years. So I think it's really imperative for us to be discussing the process of identifying a new site for the island, probably two. And I know that's not necessarily a happy thing to be engaging in, but it's a very necessary thing. So I'd like to suggest adding that to our wish list on policies.
Okay.
Laura Acacia.
Laura?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. So I would like to also see some direct action, especially within our legislative policy proposals, to be coordinating with the visitor industry to develop waste reduction strategies. Also, really honing in again on legislation and policy and practice within our county especially, but statewide as well, with C&D diversion and reuse infrastructure. So I really would like to see our state prioritizing and funding reuse infrastructure and programs, especially when it comes to consumer goods that are tossed out on the regular. And as far as EPR, I would just add to a reuse version of EPR based on, a focus on reduction of our solid waste as opposed to recycling. I would like our legislators also, and the county Department of Environmental Management, and I will meet with Chris especially and our administration around this, to engage Department of Health to take regulatory action or take action and regulation on micro and nanoplastic pollution. I know that they are working through some of those issues as it's an emerging pollutant, and to really hone and implement very clear guidelines and permitting requirements and regulation and enforcement around microplastic and nanoplastic pollution within our waste stream. And then I would just echo, you know, the cesspool conversion, but especially around our priorities.
Anybody else want to add to the solid waste section or take away? We cannot get everything done. Let's focus. Where do we want to put our energy? Hi. Del, turn off one of your machines. You're getting feedback. We're getting your feedback.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. Allowing trailers back at transfer stations.
Anybody else regarding priority solid waste issues? And like I say, it's a priority list, so you shouldn't have everything you ever wanted on it. It should be the things that at the end of the year, hey, we did this, we did that one, or we need to keep working on this. Got the microphones open at their station. So mute one of them. All right, wastewater. Again, I kind of like these wishy visioning kind of statements as overriding no matter what it is we work on. We need to deal with safe.
I have a quick question. It has to do with cesspools and I guess there was.
We're moving to wastewater, which is
okay. So you're not
cesspools. So
okay, I can wait.
We are, like I said, the general goal is we want to safely manage our wastewaters, and at a minimum, we need to do compliance. I mean, as a former EPA rule writer, the rules are supposed to ensure safety. So that's the goal. Expand the capabilities to improve our wastewater collection and treatment, operating again with this philosophy of resource management, not waste management, and leveraging public-private partnerships. So the shorter list that I came up with, and I've got more, comply with those federal AOCs. Now maybe they aren't going to be enforced for the next 4 years, but they exist. They have penalties associated with them. They were negotiated to make sure that we can improve our systems and keep them operational, and fantastic systems with Kelly have been put in place to track deadlines of progress. And I think that's got to be one of the ongoing priorities of the EMC to make sure that the compliance with that AOC, or all those AOCs, we have so many, is happening, and we don't let it slide. Second one was the good old integrated wastewater management plan that we're all dying to see. We're seeing bits of it and pieces. Had a nice presentation. By the way, that was included in the package of materials for this meeting. It was given by Corolla at the last meeting in November or October, whatever. So I wanted you to have a copy of those slides. They're really good summarization of where they're moving on integrated wastewater management plan And if Chris is still on board online, those are still the planning process that is happening, I think. And then once we get it nailed, implement the integrated wastewater management plan. And incorporate opportunities to bring in private wastewater treatment services. Do the kind of partnership, for example, that Puako is looking to do with the Manalani wastewater treatment private facilities. Keeping aware of cost-effective technologies at all time, and coordinating with state, other county authorities to make sure that we're protecting the waters Mauka Makai, and strong public communications. Now, I didn't explicitly use the word cesspool, but in my mind, that is a lot of what the integrated wastewater management plan is about. Certainly huge chunks are trying to deal with the lack of county sewers and treatment for stuff that now is going into cesspools. So if you want me to use the word, Erica and Charlotte,
Yes.
I do want you to use the word. I would like you to actually even include Act 132, which is the mandate to remove all cesspools, which the county of Hawaii has the most of.
Okay. I'll explicitly get a line in there dealing with the whole cesspool conversion program, which is buried perhaps in number 4, the need to coordinate with state and other authorities, planning, is who I was thinking about, to make sure we're doing it right. Again, we have jurisdictional issues. DEM and therefore EMC does not regulate cesspools, period. That's DOH. We don't do.
I understand that. I understand that. And I think that that's something that is getting pushed at the state level. And so it should also be pushed at the county level. There is a place for county in cesspool conversion, and the current laws, unfortunately, are looking at being modified because of the lack of coordination and work together between the county and the state. So I very much would like to see that specific language inserted in.
You would like, as a priority, an effort by EMC to encourage county jurisdiction over the cesspool conversion. I'm trying to clarify what Erica was saying, what I should write down.
Yes, that the county of Hawaii needs to work alongside other government agencies to assist in the cesspool conversion.
So is that more than what we have been doing? Have a little bit more legal authority?
I think that it's both in financing and funding. It is able to address financing and funding to homeowners and to community members that are like Puako, like Kahalu'u, like Keokaha, that are larger community centers that are needing collection. And so I don't think that it needs to be very specific in the outputs, as I think that both the county and the state need to be open to partnering and working together.
Okay.
To address financing and inventive technologies that could bring down costs to individual homeowners.
Okay. other additions, suggestions for the wastewater priorities?
Chris Barber.
Chris?
Yeah, so I just
Yeah,
wanted to throw it out. You know, although county does not regulate cesspools, we definitely do have a vested interest in being part of the solution, in whatever, you know, shape, form, you know, that does take. You know, I can't really speak about any commitments or finances or, you know, anything at this point, but I do think that, you know, one of our goals and something that, you know, Craig and Wes have definitely, you know, resonated in this administration is that, you know, there is a space for us in the solution, although that we, you know, we don't necessarily regulate cesspools. We do intend to work with the state and get into that solution space and really, you know, try to be forward thinking on how we can, you know, be a part in the solution.
No, good to hear. Yeah, I almost wonder if they need to reinstitute the cesspool working group. I think there's excellent work came out of it. Obviously, Ramsey was really involved in it. And I would hope that DM would continue to try to come up with how do we get our arms around this. Okay.
There's can I hop on that? I'm sorry, this is Erica again, Georgine. There actually is another legislative bill that is put together a working group that overlooks regulations for all of DOH's wastewater, not just cesspools, but also infrastructure to streamline grayways, to streamline permitting processes and such. And so there is some efforts right now at the state level to reconvene a group specifically focused on regulations and modifying DOH's oversight. Not modifying their oversight, sorry, but modifying the regulations specifically for wastewater.
Okay, see how that goes. One of the things, actually, I like that Stephen Holmes recommended. In the priority order, we've got to comply with the AOCs. They laid out very specific requirements and timelines, and we need to work those. So that's number one priority. Number two priority are the other ones, the other injection wells that we have, the whole mess with what needs an NPDES. We have to stay on top of that. Requirements are going to hit sooner or later. Again, maybe a lag for 4 years. But we also have KLK and a settlement going to happen around the concept of NPDES. So there are other things, but I rank order them at the AOC's first. Settlements, legal settlements where we have liability if we don't do something in many ways. And then third are what's coming in terms of new regulations, new and better ways to manage all the other stuff we're dumping into the environment. Others on wastewater that you'd like to see on this list?
Chris Barber has his hand raised.
Oh, Chris wants to do more. Okay.
Sorry, Georgine. So on this list, you know, the integrated wastewater master plan is stipulated by the AOC. So in terms of complying with our AOCs, the capital projects are definitely a component of it. And then I would say, you know, equally important are the integrated planning, you know, functions, because that is a stipulation of the AOC, as well as any necessary changes that need to happen to our code. Can I just maybe recommend that we put our legislative update as a high wastewater priority, because it really does lay down the legal framework to achieve compliance with our AOCs. Because we have three: we have the pretreatment, we have our countywide, and then we also have Pahala and Na'alehu as well. And so, you know, the stipulations in 2 of the 3 of those AOCs will be satisfied, or some stipulations will be satisfied by our county code revisions. So to me, I guess from my desk, is it's really important that, you know, my advisory committee prioritize and, you know, dig in and help us on this this legislation.
Good, good. I will add that to the clarification on what do we mean by what else in that integrated wastewater management plan. Commissioners, these are your priorities. What do you want to make sure we focus on?
I agree that cesspools need to be addressed, and the plan to actually do the conversion, it needs to be done. Also, I'd like to include review of the MPDS permits as well.
Okay.
Georgine, this
a review of the existing ones or each new one as it comes up?
As they come up, yes.
Okay. So,
hi, Georgine.
Del, is that you?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on Jim's recommendation on looking for alternative places for a landfill, because that was brought up a while ago too. But you know, nobody likes the topic of incineration, but you know, I thought maybe a while ago when I mentioned that we could work with Pohakuloa, because they have an incinerator, and not to throw everything there, but as an alternative, you know, to work with them prior to having to need them, to maybe use their incinerator at some point, at some time, so we don't have to keep trucking the trash over to Pu'anahulu. You know, that was something I think we should at least entertain, and maybe set up a meeting with Pohakuloa to look at that. It's not like we're building we're not building an incineration plant. We're using an existing one that probably could use our trash. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put it on the list.
Thank you.
Any other additions? My thought is that I'll revise this and put a little bit more detail that you want, and then offer it to whoever picks up the baton to work it as actually set some priorities, as opposed to let's do everything at our next meeting. So leave it to them. And obviously, or I encourage you strongly, this needs to be a living document. Things are going to change, staffing situations, legal situations, disasters, who knows what's going to happen. So it should be fluid, just going back as a checkpoint of are we doing what we want to do as a commission. And I think getting creative on how we do it. We haven't used a lot of pigs, and I think we got some good stuff from the one we had. But that means you've got to spend some time offline working the issues. So I'm going to move to the item 5.3, discussion regarding coping with reduced DEM staffing.
Can I request that we do a
You need
bio break?
a bio break. Okay, 5 minutes for bio break. Stop recording.
still on.
Okay, we are back in session, dealing with item 5.3, discussion regarding coping with reduced DEM staffing levels. This was deferred from our November meeting. And just for clarification, I want to emphasize, having received legal counsel, that we're not talking about the management of human resources in terms of the employees of the DEM. What we are going to try to restrict this conversation to is, are there ways that one could restructure the DEM programs using technology or other things? By the way, these examples here, and I forgot AI, for crying out loud. That shows you how old I am. We're just plucked out of the sky. They aren't specifics, just to give you a feel for what to kind of think about in terms of how EMC could advise, again, both DEM, but maybe even the council, or talk about changes at the state level to deal with the fact that we can't hire. The people are not submitting applications to this commission or to the DEM. So we need to have some creative thinking going on of how can we get done what needs to be done. You gave me, now I'm going to have 3 pages of priorities. How do you do all that stuff when there are only 24 hours in a day, and union restrictions on how hard we can make people work? So open discussion. Like I said, I threw out some thoughts, and it may be one that we take to, again, a permitted interaction group to try and explore some means to do it. It's a countywide, it's a statewide issue. And so we are not going to solve the housing crisis or the cost of living crisis in the state. So think DEM, managing solid and liquid waste, and how we help.
Facebook ad postings.
Hi, Georgine, can you hear me?
Della has some ideas, and she's
Yeah.
as testimony. Maybe you can go through and discuss. Again, it wasn't my intent that the list of things I have here are recommendations. It was just give you some ideas. So take it away, Del Otsuka.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm only adjusting what you stated, but there's a lot more concerns with the staffing. And I'm not trying, before I read my testimony, I'm not trying to manage HR. We just have a problem with staff. So it's almost contradicting that all, the human resource issues have to be excluded from these discussions, because none of the recommendations or suggestions we give to DEM regarding the services they provide, it becomes mute when we can't talk about the staffing issue. So, and I want to say that, I look forward to working with the new administration, and I am optimistic that we can maybe address a lot of the issues that were not followed through with, or some of the questions that still remain. So, if I may, the written testimony, as you know, is on item 5, number 3. And regarding, first, I appreciate the intent behind your circumstances. However, there are many, and I believe it is crucial to emphasize that any redesign or optimization of programs must be rooted in the realities of our current staffing. While these ideas have merit, the following concerns and considerations must be acknowledged. Redesigning of programs to reduce the need for additional county employees. With 87 vacancies, which was the last report, already in critical operational roles, reducing the need for additional employees is not viable for many programs without risking service disruptions. Solid waste management, wastewater operations, recycling, derelict and abandoned vehicles, and green waste have experienced staffing issues. Transfer stations are already struggling to meet public needs.
Could
So
I
I urge,
sit there and clarify what I meant, and the wording was perhaps not optimal? I meant, yeah, we've got all these vacancies. Let's not come up with more work for any additional hires we need to make. Let's reduce the number of vacancies that we need to still fill.
and that would go to your draft also about looking for ways to find staffing. But anyway, back to my testimony. No, I only tried to address what was written, and there's more to it than that. So I just urge the commission to ensure that any redesign initiatives prioritize maintaining existing services while addressing the root causes of staffing shortages. And automation offers potential efficiencies, but requires upfront investment, skilled workers, operators, and maintenance staff. It is not a standalone solution, but one that complements, not replaces, adequate staffing. Furthermore, any automation plans must account for Hawaii's unique environmental logistical challenges. Because, yeah, we have extremes. And outsourcing may appear as a short-term solution, but it does not eliminate the need for skilled workers to oversee and execute operations, whether by county employees or contractors. And additionally, the Hawaii Supreme Court's Kona decision imposes legal constraints on privatization that must be carefully considered. Resource sharing and equipment scaling. Resource sharing with neighboring counties or agencies could be beneficial, but would require agreements that respect operational autonomy. Scaling equipment to align with current staffing levels risk overburdening our workforce, which could exacerbate existing challenges. It already does. And so, again, trying to exclude human services from any of our agenda items because it's not within our purview for the council is contradicting, So without adequate staffing, no amount of redesign, automation, outsourcing, recommendations, or anything like that would be possible. So again, I'm not trying to manage HR because HR is already at a deficit with employees, so all the county programs are and departments. And I've been trying to keep up with the staffing because it is very important to me. There's a lot to it. So I'm hoping that with this new administration, we can at least come up with, ways like I mentioned, Advanced, which is an apprenticeship program with the community college. And they're working with union companies that actually work with electricians, carpenters, pipe fitters, plumbers, all those disciplines that our county needs. So when they're done with their apprenticeship, they become journeymen. So it's like we have a really good opportunity to get them. So I think we should try harder to work with the colleges and with high schools for interns to give them a benefit or an opportunity to learn about our environment and our country, our county, and not go away to college. They can just be here working for all of us. So again, that's all I have to say with the staffing again. Thank you.
Okay, as I understand, take it back, I don't understand. But there is a new director for human resources. And when I was listening to the confirmation hearings, it sounded like they're very aware of the challenges of filling positions and the need to go back and reevaluate how they're hiring, who they're hiring, what the specifications, qualifications are for positions. So I think that effort is underway, and I would hope that within DEM, you're likewise throwing your 2 cents in of what you need and doing the evaluations of the vacancies that you've got. But I was trying to go on a different road, and maybe I should look to Gonzo in terms of, you've got limited set of resources, how are you gonna improve efficiency? What are the tools that you could, yes, you need to buy them, but they're cheaper than people, that you could use in terms of program management, working the logistics, maybe that there's a cheap AI that just got released from China. Maybe there's stuff that could go and tell you where the right place to send the trucks when, and or we could get Teslas to pick up and automated self-driving haulers. What do you think?
It's the last thing we need.
Or you can use volunteers from your community.
No,
No,
unions.
we do have union issues. Della's quite right there. I don't know whether Kono decision is something that should be on the priority list. You guys can get to decide that. But anyway, so I was just looking for, you know, think about you run this organization, your boss gave you 5 guys. Now do it. Where would you go? Where would you scramble? Are there things in the waste world?
Well, just a suggestion, and I mentioned it previously, this is Gonzalo Garcia, District 7. There is a type of analysis when you look at loading, trucking, hauling, moving material called Lean Sigma. And there's probably some AI tools now that make that really, really fast. But it's a way where you do a detailed analysis and you can do it transfer station by transfer station and come up with an overall strategy utilizing this Lean Sigma tool where you optimize personnel, trucking, hours of operation, all of that within the construct of the Lean Sigma analysis. And I know in the private sector, we use that type of tool a lot. And we, like on one project I ran, we were able to shave about $10 million over 2 years on trucking alone. So there's ways where you maximize the efficiency, and there are contractors who do those analyses. There's different levels, and the reason I'm kind of at the entry level, I'm what's called, would have been considered a green belt.
I have one too.
Lean Sigma.
Yeah.
So when you're a green belt, you're trained to identify opportunities. And then when you're a black belt, then you basically run the analysis. And then, like I said, there's probably AI now that would, because I've been out of touch with the private sector for about 5 to 6 years. Yeah. So anyway, it is a very, very viable tool to optimize operations.
Have you looked at that? I mean, actually, when the SWAC recommended that there be an operational study on solid waste, that's what I was thinking. Have you tried that?
Not the
Okay, well.
But I know that the mayor is going to start a human resources task force. So get the best and brightest together and come up with ideas. And then also, like yesterday, Christy and myself met with a group that they want to start targeting the high school kids, community college kids. Or maybe like the high school students can start earning their licenses or certificates in high school. So when they get out of high school, they're ready to go.
That sounds great, Craig.
As far as personnel, can I ask a question about what is the particular problem? Is it recruitment or training, or what is the impediment to getting more people on board?
I think it's all.
All of the cost of living
And retention.
Can I add something too? This is Dell, District 3. I know we spoke of it before, but I just think it's important to start with the high school kids too, and the colleges.
I think that's great to look at how you can start doing that. I think the whole cesspool conversion effort is going to require so much technical skills to get that done. I mean,
So-
I raised my hand that you can convert my operation, but I can't find a contractor that will do it. Because there's nobody on this island, there's one guy, so, you know, you get in line. So I think there are some opportunities there for training. What I was more thinking about is